to do that was for the students to see a chronological process where they see their first presentation, their second presentation, and then a final presentation. So they get opportunities to actually see the changes over time and reflect on those processes. So that's the second screen that I wanted to show people. I won't play them. And the other thing we do is we support them on the iPhone actual side. And you can see in this screen, I hope. Carolyn, you're right. The presentations are recorded using the iPhones and then uploaded to YouTube. We find that the size of these things and the quality of the recordings means that not only do the students create these things and we save them up to YouTube, but they also get to reflect on the processes, and I'll show you where the reflections are in a moment. And not only do they get to see their own development, but they get to participate in the development of each other, because we're trying to build a sense of not competition, but a sense of collaboration and community. So you can see on this screen we've got, information about podcasts. We introduced the students to Grammar Girl and a few other things like that, which are quite fun. We didn't get a lot of buy-in there, I must admit. And we had some briefing information, information on the practicalities of how to use the devices. No, well, actually, we have our own channel, Carolyn, to answer your question about privacy settings. We could just hide them completely. And so we publish a lot of information in here. And we also use this as our site for the most popular tools that the students started using. And you can see there that some of the ones that have been identified by the students are things like Dropbox, Evernote, and Facebook, of course. Students love their Facebook, like everybody else in the world, just about. Wince is a great one. They all use this one a great deal for cue cards and designing those, and they're learning a lot about that, because what they tended to do was to write out their cue cards with so much information they would then peer at them. Extremely poor presentation skills. And they've learned after the first round not to do that anymore, and they're improving. Camera and video, of course, and Twitter. They've been using a lot of Twitter to communicate with the students. So the other thing I wanted to show people was we have, one moment please, we also have our, oops, wrong one, my apologies, we have a podcast channel as well. Just opened up the wrong one. Okay, so one of the things we did do was to ease the process, you have to become a member of this particular channel, and all of the sequential videos produced by the students and speaking, and you'll see there's one student up on screen at the moment who's speaking about children having children, because in order to make this engaging for the students, they had quite free to speak on any topic they chose. And so the diversity of topics chosen was truly astonishing and very, very impressive. So a lot of this discussion and this peer feedback actually took place within the YouTube environment itself, as well as the classroom. So let me I just want to do all the web stuff at once, if I may, and we'll come back to it. I think that's about all. Yep, okay. So let me come back to the main session. One second, please. Okay, we should be on the project itself. Please wait for a moment. Okay, thank you very much. And you can see there, and so what we did was we recruited students for the project. I thought it'd be handy to show you the project first and then talk about what we found afterwards. And you can see there it's in Chinese and English because we have a very interesting environment in Hong Kong where students are expected to be trilingual and biliterate. That is Cantonese, which is the local language, English, and Putonghua, which is, of course, Mandarin from the mainland and the most spoken language in China, and they're expected to write in English and Chinese. So it's an amazing thing to contemplate when we have, I think it's about 13% of our students in Australia in high school dual language. The course that we did was focused on public speaking and presentation skills. So clear issues we identified were things like vocabulary, speaking skills, but we also wanted to build some critical processes in terms of peer evaluation and questioning techniques, lots of self-selected topics, and then using the portfolio system to explain everything. The learning outcomes that we're trying to provide evidence for, and we think we've got a much more interesting way of doing it, particularly with the continuity in terms of presenting the speeches of the students in a chronological order for both reflection and grading. The audience purpose and what have you is done mostly in the face-to-face. The speech can be analysed either in video or face-to-face, and then the peer reflection was done with individual students who were assigned to give peer feedback after students do it. And I attended a number of these sessions, and the students prepared quite well for these, for their job of asking the questions. We've collected a great amount of data. We had one full class. We gave them all an iPhone 4, which was interesting. As I said, we revised the curriculum, and we focused on all of these particular issues that I've discussed. A little bit about the background of the students. We have a high percentage of female students in the university and a significant number of students from the mainland whose English is generally not as good as the local students. A lot of art students, that is in cultural studies or social sciences and languages, not surprisingly, and a small number of business students. Mind you, I have to say that students were extremely happy to be given an iPhone for this particular project, and there weren't any problems there. I think I probably could have lined up the staff. We've identified all of these particular tools that have been popular with the students, and we had a sort of app of the week for the first 5 or 6 weeks as students got started. Chad, in answer to your question, do they have to return the phones? They most certainly do. The UGC is not quite at the point of giving away high-end equipment to students, but we will be reusing these again with a second cohort next semester. So they're all looking a bit sad because they're going to have to give back their iPhones. And in answer to your question, you might have missed it earlier, but the UGC funds these highly competitive general research fund grants. And they're sort of like the Australian equivalent of the research fund grants. Just trying to think of the name. Maybe you can help me out here, Geoffrey.
Sorry, is this the ALTC you're talking
about? Whatever the top research grant is in Australia at the moment.
Oh, ARC. So that's the Australian Research
probably ARC
for
thank you,
discipline-based research.
Yeah, it's probably an ARC grant. It would be the Australian equivalent. My fault for not being in Australia for quite so long. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we had lots of technical support, as I said, and you've seen that on the website. So I'll just skip through these. We kept sort of tracking what were the favourite entertainment and communication and English learning apps. And please take notice that the apps they focused on were mostly about content delivery, which was interesting. Things like iBooks and dictionaries. Well, dictionaries, not surprisingly, if you're learning another language, a dictionary is going to be pretty crucial. It was interesting to see the kinds of things they use for entertainment as well. And we also use the apps in the classroom to get a bit more engagement there, because part of the Asian psychology is the reluctance to identify oneself and put one's hand up in class and identify oneself with a particular idea. What works much, much better is to get group activities going, and then you'll find that they're very, very vocal, and they participate at very, very high levels. And just have to make sure that you do it in a way that doesn't embarrass them, culturally speaking. But I assure you, you can get just as vigorous discussions within Asian classrooms as you can in Australian classrooms. So eClicker was particularly useful. As I said, we used Twitter a lot to identify favorite apps and to give class announcements. That worked much, much better than email, which in fact the students don't read. And the evaluations were often combined, so we made these truly blended classrooms where the YouTube site, our channel, you saw that we could actually get students to vote on the quality of the presentations, but we could do it in a way that didn't embarrass anybody. And very, very useful tool. Another example I took from the screen dump. I wasn't entirely confident that you could see our pages on the internet. So you see that we had lots and lots of ways of doing things in the class. So it was a very active, a very technology-rich, a very interesting and engaging curriculum. And that's a link to the portfolio. If people need to have a look around our portfolio system, then by all means talk to me after the session. A few more resources we provided. So we collected lots of qualitative and quantitative data. The quantitative data were mostly around surveys. We are attempting to get ITSC to cooperate here by giving the MAC addresses of the iPhones so that we can identify their rate of usage. We're not particularly interested in invading their privacy. We simply want to have some idea of the rate of use across the university through the wireless networks and the connectivity, because every classroom is wireless connected. But we've identified some issues there. In that our wireless network is not necessarily as good as our ITSC claims. That's our IT section. Clearly, the screen size on the iPhones, even with the iPhone 4, which has a beautiful display, for reading purposes is still not great. And the other thing, do I do any verified assessment? Could you expand on that expression, please, Mike? And the OS system, even though it's very friendly and straightforward, the technical side of connecting to our wireless network was not necessarily simple and easy for the students. And they were very unfamiliar with doing scholarly activities on the phones. So basically, the phones were their personalized devices. They weren't necessarily strongly associated in the student minds with learning. So that was a key issue for us to try and identify this problem. So thank you, Carolyn. Perceive them as scholarly or more novel. Well, we had to work very hard on this to actually change student practice. If you come into a classroom and you're used to thinking about your mobile phone as your primary method of socialization and communication amongst your peers primarily, then changing that mindset to where they're used as tools for reflection, tools for practicing, tools. These things seem to be very obvious to us, but I have to say they're not necessarily obvious to the students.